guys, late night review coming at you. And the only way I can describe chapter 1070, honestly, especially after reading it, is out of the frying pan and into the fire. Because even after receiving the last-ditch help from Sentomaru and escaping with Vegapunk, Lucci and the others aren't really that far behind with Seraphim either, now under their control. And with the added wrinkle of Kizaru on the move, it's feeling like Bonnie might sabotage this escape in some way, or something is just bound to go awry because of her anger towards him. But in either scenario, obviously the thing to talk about is with Kizaru showing up again, it does kind of raise the question: is this Oda setting up a confrontation between Kizaru versus the Straw Hats, specifically Kizaru versus Sanji, a long-awaited fight that everyone wants to see? And while I don't want to get people's hopes up too high in this assumption, we might just get that fight. Like, I don't want to promise it, but it does seem like he might, just with the end of this chapter, he might be setting that up. Which, not gonna lie, I have been curious about what a matchup like that would look like. But at the same time, it does make me curious how a matchup like this would work given the added circumstances of Kizaru also seemingly sending every battleship to Egghead as well. Like it's one of those things where, for as much as I want to see Sanji fight Kizaru like so many others, I don't know how possible Oda has made it with this setup. Like, if I were to kind of, I think honestly, if something akin to a Kizaru versus Sanji fight were to happen in this in this arc, I think it would be more of like a little bit of a tease of the fight, but not an actual full-on fight. Like, I think if there was ever a time and place for a full Kizaru versus Sanji fight to happen, it would probably be in a scenario where the Straw Hats invade like Navy HQ, a la a sort of repeat of Marineford in some way. But again, I don't know like how that would play out in this circumstance. But again, if it does happen, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, because again, I am very curious of what a Sanji versus Kizaru fight would look like. I'm curious enough to see how that plays out. Of course, the other major thing to talk about with this chapter is we dive even more into the bloodline experiments Vegapunk has been conducting all this time, and the reveal about the Zone Fruits isn't too surprising. In fact, it's pretty much in line with what we've already learned through Caesar's own research and development of the Smiles. The bigger reveal, though, comes from the reveal of what Vegapunk has been able to do with the Paramythia types, which is, as long as Vegapunk has a sample of the Devil Fruit Eater's blood, he can pretty much replicate it by combining it with his own concoction of green blood. At least that's what I've understood. That's what I've understood from the way it's explained, which is what's powering the Seraphim. Now, when I heard that, I didn't think much of it, but it just sounded like a pretty straightforward explanation of what was going on there. But then, the more I thought about it, the more disturbed I became about the whole prospect, because that means that basically all the enemies the Straw Hats have defeated have had their Devil Fruit abilities in some form or another utilized in Vegapunk's experiments, and it's probably what Kuma gave up in exchange for the favor he asked of Vegapunk to input the orders to save the Straw Hats. Like Kuma gave his blood, and honestly, this is, like, to me, this is just another example of what I've been thinking and saying all this time when I look at Vegapunk's ideology. This is a mess of Vegapunk's own making. Good intentions be damned, and yet, like, I don't know. I want to say this chapter kind of gives a little bit of hint that he seems to understand that to some degree as well, or at least this chapter gave us an indication of it. But at the same time, it's like he still operates on the belief that it doesn't matter how it's utilized. Like, that science must live on. And again, I get that, but unfortunately he's also, it's one of those things where he's living an idealistic dream. He doesn't like, I'm sure I want to say he doesn't realize it, but doesn't realize that his science has been utilized as a weapon, but at the same time he does, so it's like, I genuinely, that's the frustrating but interesting thing about Vegapunk, is that he operates on a strictly straight line, that he believes it doesn't matter what he does as long as his science can live on, which again I respect, but it's also very blind in his approach. And on a lighter note though, after they make it out of Egghead, I like how Frankie and Usopp are completely alright with Vegapunk tagging along. As you can tell, that they just want to pick his brain and learn from him, whereas Nami and Sanji are like, no way, bad idea. Like, it was just a very funny moment seeing these polar opposite reactions to Vegapunk tagging along, and of course you have Bonnie, who legitimately wants to kill him, but hopefully, again, that they can at least talk it out first. Like, there's a lot that I think like that is going to be useful for. I think Vegapunk, he does have a lot of info on Kuma, which, for better or worse, is stuff that I think that Bonnie does need to hear. Like, from everything from pretty much everything and after that, it's kind of just going to be completely up to her as to what she decides and how. And after learning all that information, how she reacts to it, I think is ultimately going to drive her decision. Now, is she gonna kill him? That's hard to say, frankly. Like, I don't think, obviously, I don't think she's gonna kill him, because again, we still need. Again, I still kind of believe that the whole thing that's gonna happen is that Vegapunk is gonna probably join the revolutionaries at some point, but it's like, at the same time, I don't know, like, right now Bonnie does seem kind of on the warpath with this whole thing. And yeah, aside from all that though, I really like how dynamic Oda was able to be in drawing the fight of Luffy versus Lucci in this chapter, and I can't properly describe it other than say, ever since Luffy unlocked the power of Nika Joy Boy, it feels like Oda's found himself having a lot more freedom in how he choreographs Luffy's fights now. Like, just having the kind of power Luffy does now, it's opened up a door of creativity that Oda can really tap into. Now, as far as the technicals of the fight, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of pushback about how Lucci didn't get outright destroyed by Luffy, or how is Lucci even putting up a fight against Luffy. Like, I'm sure these questions are definitely going to pop up, which to anyone who has that issue, my response would be threefold, let's say. I think first is that Luffy is probably still learning how to harness that power, the power of his new abilities, although even then, it was still shown Lucci got pretty thoroughly wrecked. Like even if Luffy is holding back, I don't think he's holding back all that much, frankly. Like, I think this is kind of the level at which we're seeing, the level at which Luffy's at in terms of controlling this power. And two, the fact that Lucci has like an awakened zone power, I think there is an argument to be made that Lucci has some manner of endurance. As I said, she's some manner of endurance just from awakening his zone powers. So, however small that endurance is worth. Again, also third, and one for the road as well, but even if Luffy didn't have full control, I wouldn't be surprised if, despite how like crazy and Looney Tunes things got in that fight, I think he was still holding back. Like, if you remember the fight, with basically of Luffy fighting Kaido in the final moments of that fight, like, Luffy really went ham on him, and that's because Kaido himself was a very tough opponent. Like, Kaido was basically a brick wall that Luffy needed to break. So, whereas Lucci, for better or worse, is kind of a weaker opponent compared to Kaido. So, again, I think it does make sense that he probably is holding back a little bit in that fight. Because if he went full out against Lucci, I think he would legitimately put Lucci in the hospital. And as weird as it is to say, I think Luffy also has kind of a weird respect for Lucci in some way. But of course, now that the Straw Hats have escaped, it'll be interesting to see just how much further Lucci can push things. Can push things before he does legitimately land himself, Kaku, and Stussy in trouble. Because again, as he says, as it's stated once again, Lucci is kind of breaking the rules a bit here. Like he's supposed to be waiting for the Navy, but he legitimately wants to go after Luffy and the Straw Hats. Like he wants to pursue them. And again, it's one of those things where I think just Lucci taking that proactive maneuver of trying to chase down the Straw Hats himself. Again, I think that is going to land him in trouble with the Navy and the government. But I do still like how they're showing Lucci's willingness to kind of take matter, to be more proactive, to be more independent, and take actions in his own hands. It's just the only question now is how he navigates the minefield of like, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do this without pissing off the government? I think that's still one thing he's kind of still skirting that line about. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell, subscribe button, and just share it around, guys. Dark Knight of MMA, signing off. Later, everyone.